One. Thank you. And I just heard the door. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 19th meeting of the Winchester School Committee, 7 o'clock here at the Parkhurst School. I'm going to do a quick rundown of our agenda tonight. We'll start off with public comment, and I'm going to use some discretion tonight and pull the chair report up. It will follow public comment for a couple of statements and announcements. Then we'll turn to Evan and Nate, who are here tonight, to tell us what's going on at the high school, and I'm sure we'll get a colorful report from either the two of you or Mark on a certain hockey game that was at the Garden Sunday night, for those who managed to stay for it. We have a school choice public hearing for next school year. Under reports and discussion items, we're going to hear from Mr. Aria, who's our athletic director, for his seasonal athletics report. We'll have some discussion on fees for next school year, particularly transportation and athletics. There's an update on the FY19 budget. That's the budget we're in right now. We will discuss the Morocco and Lynch School Statement of Interest submission. The Select Board did meet last night. And then we have our annual superintendent evaluation of Dr. Evans. Under action items, we have a vote to accept a donation of 2 batting cages and a portable outfield fence. We need to vote on school choice for next school year. We have a second reading and a vote on 2 policies from our policy subcommittee meeting. And then we also have preschool tuition rates for next school year. We have some minutes to approve, and then we will roll into the superintendent report and review future agenda items. Our next meeting date is actually April 9th, which will be after the municipal election on Tuesday. So this is the last meeting of this school committee, barring some emergency. So, and then we will adjourn. So having said all that, is there anyone here tonight for public comment? If so, please introduce yourself. Come on up and speak into the mic. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, how are you?
We have the chair of the Finance Committee with us tonight.
Thanks for offering the chance to speak. I just wanted to give people a quick update on where the finance, so Aaron Cotillo, chair of the Finance Committee. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on where we stand from a budget perspective. We had hoped to actually vote the education override budget earlier this week, yesterday, in fact. We didn't have enough folks. We wanted to have a healthy discussion. There were folks that were out sick kind of last minute. So we decided to push it to this Thursday. But I did just want to let you know that what is being voted is the number that was approved in this room. That's what's being put forth. I can't say exactly how everybody's going to vote, but I do know that people were comfortable with the number that, a lot of people were comfortable with the number that came through, particularly the one after you guys voted it, right, that was even lower than the town manager's target. So, you know, from a fiscal responsibility perspective, that was appreciated. You know, if you had any other questions, I can try to answer them, and then we'll be voting on Thursday night.
That was just what I was going to ask. Next steps, because I know you guys are meeting. It's Thursday, Town Hall, 7 o'clock?
That's 7:30.
7:30.
Yeah, and actually it is posted as our public hearing. We do 1 per budget
Right.
cycle, so that's what it is. That's what this one's going to be.
Perfect. Okay. We don't typically open it up for questions during public comment, but given Aaron is here in an official capacity, are there any questions for the chair of the Finance Committee? Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it.
Happy to. Yep.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone else here for public comment this evening? Seeing none. So I'm going to jump ahead to the chair report for a moment. As I said a moment ago, this is the last meeting of this school committee meeting. And while I am quite confident after Tuesday's election, when we reconvene as a new committee, we will find time to bring Susan in to embarrass her and speak about all her many accomplishments and contributions. I would really be remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge Susan's 6 years of service to this committee, to our families and students in the district. Susan, in my opinion, has brought an incredible amount of intellect, good judgment, patience, and I'll even say virtue to the job. I am a better school committee member because I have served alongside you. I mean that a lot. So thank you very much for everything you've done for us. We will bring you back and embarrass you for a great length of time, and I will see if Brian's daughter can get in the cake business, and we'll fatten ourselves up next door, maybe before a school committee meeting soon. I'm happy to open it up to comments if anybody wants to make them now, but definitely did not want you to leave the room tonight without me saying thank you.
That's very kind, I sort of feel like I want to say thanks back at all of you. It's been a privilege working with all of you and learning. I learned a lot. And as Sarah Swiger, I think, used to say, you never really accomplish anything all by yourself, alone. that this is very much a group endeavor. And, I'm very proud to have worked with you, and I think the district is in a good spot, and it's tremendously rewarding, so.
Thank you, Susan. Nice job. So, on the subject of elected officials and elections, I have an announcement of my own tonight. It's really less about me and more about the override question on Tuesday. I want to share that for 9 years. I hope you'll appreciate this. Well, it is an announcement, but it's an uncontested election, so I'm going to make it anyway. For 9 years, I've had the honor of serving students and families as a member of the school committee. This next term will be my last, as I focus on one of the most important initiatives to come our way in a decade. While I've always appreciated this town's support for debt exclusion overrides funding our school building projects, an operating override, one that supports multiple fiscal years and sustains our capital stabilization funds, has eluded us. In my 9 years on this committee, and you can count this with your two hands, there was talk of the need for an operating override, but it was small enough to just belt tighten. Then there was talk of the need for an operating override, but we needed a town manager search. There was talk of the need for an operating override, but we needed to build a new Vincent Owen. There was talk of the need for an operating override, and then we redistricted. There was talk of the need for an operating override, and then we saved Right Lock Farm. There was talk of the need for an operating override, and then we built the new Winchester High School. There was talk of the need for an operating override, but then we needed a superintendent search. There was talk of the need for an operating override, but we needed to update the master plan. And then there was talk of the need for an operating override, but we had to expand McCall again, twice. Our schools have been lauded for our students' success, yet throughout it all, Winchester has seen stunning double-digit enrollment growth, while statewide K-12 enrollment has fallen. Against this backdrop of growth, our per-pupil spending has fallen farther and farther behind the state average, while municipal services slowly eroded via unfilled positions or retirements. Our per-pupil spending in 2017 was roughly equal to the state average in 2012. So, no more talk. Thanks to the year-long efforts of the State of the Town Working Group and input of the Finance Committee, the Select Board has placed on the March 26th ballot an override question which will provide the necessary revenues to meet the pent-up operating and capital needs of Winchester and support us for the next few years to come. Should the override pass on Tuesday, I will spend my last term in office working hard to ensure that these precious tax dollars are spent wisely to the benefit of our children in social emotional wellness, technology, improving outcomes in the classroom, and in giving our students critical thinking and collaboration opportunities that excite them. Should voters reject question 1, positions and services across Winchester will be cut on July 1st, and I will roll up my sleeves to go to work on the case for another override. Please visit our informational website. You can Google Decision 01890 to find it. Go there for information on the needs for an override and the consequences of the outcome of Tuesday's election. And please join me in breaking the 9 years of talk. Thank you. So, chair report out of the way. I'm going to move on to student report. Evan, Nate, would you come up? Welcome.
Hello.
Bye, Aaron. Thank you.
Sure. So I would start us off with an athletics report, but I think we'll hear about the hockey game from Mr. Aria. So the spring sports season started Monday, and we'll be having tryouts and practices all week. Student Council hosted Night of the Arts last night, the 5th annual one, where we showcased visual arts, live performances, and films to the community and students of WHS. And we had a pretty good turnout and a really fun night. It was awesome. A few weeks ago, a bunch of sophomores competed in the regional contest for National History Day in Beverly. And we had 3 honorable mentions come out of that. Those were Georgia Lawrence, Katie Liu, and Amelia Murray. And we had 12 students that will move on to the state competition at Winchester High School on April 6th. Those students are myself, Canella Boritos, Juliet Jang, Maggie Eade, Abby Norden, Isabella Ballion, Alex Cumming, Aiden Kimberly, Boyang Wang, Brianna Yang, Iman Ong, Michelle Wu. So if you see any of those, congratulate them. Winchester's Model UN team, 12 members, got to go to the National High School Model UN Conference in New York City a few weeks ago. And the team received an award of excellence. And 2 students got to speak at the closing ceremonies. Those students were Charlotte Bradley and Spencer Wu. And lastly, this past week, WHS host families welcomed Italian exchange students. So they have been shadowing other students around the school, getting to know the culture, and interacting with other teachers and students. And they've had a few tours into Boston and other excursions.
Great. Thank you.
Hello. So tomorrow, during Wind Block, the Social Studies Department in the high school will be hosting the annual Financial Literacy Fair. It's a mandatory meeting for all juniors in the high school. I know that a lot of upperclassmen, seniors, volunteer to help out, particularly those taking economics. It's always a good time for the juniors to learn about their responsibilities once they matriculate and move on in life. This Thursday, March 21st at 6 p.m., Connect and Commit will be hosting their dessert auction for deserted dogs. There's plenty of desserts where all community members are welcome to come and bid. All the money will go to deserted dog shelters in the Massachusetts area. Earlier this month, we had a very successful spring musical, Xanadu. It was quite the show, and it was an amazing feat from all of the students that performed in it and helped out behind the scenes. Winchester High School is lucky to have 2 National Merit finalists. Earlier this year we had semifinalists, and so now in this stage in the game, the finalists are 2 of 15,000 seniors in the entire country, out of every single senior in the country. So that's a very nice accomplishment.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for our 2 student reps tonight? Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Judy, we have a school choice public hearing. I'd like to move into quickly, and then we'll get to Mr. Uria.
Sure.
Just refresh everybody's memory. We take this up every year, and why?
So this is one of those pieces of the Ed Reform Act that expanded inter-district school choice and required districts to vote not to participate. There's an assumption you will participate unless you vote otherwise. And I think everyone is aware that we are completely out of space. We are over capacity at the high school and have no empty classrooms at the elementary or middle school either. And so even if I thought that this would be a good financial decision, it's a decision that my recommendation would be that we vote not to participate in school choice because of our enrollment growth and overcrowding in our existing facilities.
And that is, in fact, the very reason for which, for 9 years in a row, the school committee has always voted no on school choice, because we don't have any room, and when we build space, we fill it up. So this is the public hearing on the agenda. If you don't have any other remarks, I would need a motion to open the public hearing for anyone who's here who would like to comment.
I would move that we open the public hearing on school choice for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So public hearing is open. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to speak on the matter of school choice for the 2019-2020 school year? Seeing none.
I would move that we close the public hearing on school choice for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We will come back to the vote under action items later tonight. So then let us ask Mr. Uria to come join us at the table.
He still looks tired from Sunday night.
That was brutal, wasn't it?
A lot of other people other than me there too. It was great. I mean, we had to wait a long time before we started our game. I'm still trying to confirm, but I think it was the latest start time to an MIA game in the history of the state, and possibly the latest finish.
Good to be famous.
Yeah. So we
Everybody's
started the game at 9:58.
For everybody's benefit, there was a BC High game
There was
on
a
the
s-
sheet prior.
yes, prior, it went
to a
4
overtime,
overtimes.
Second, third,
Fourth.
fourth overtime.
And they didn't score until late into the 4th overtime. And then we got on the ice and started the game. And the kids played great. They carried the play for the majority of the game, but we just couldn't get it done. But they played great, and the fans were awesome. Kids were, a lot of fans were getting restless, but they behaved themselves and they did a great job. No, I couldn't see anybody leave early, so I think the majority of our kids and our fans stayed and supported the kids, which was great.
Awesome.
And
So-
speaking of scoring late, I mean, it was a tie game.
It was a tie game with 4 minutes left, and
Yeah.
in Duxbury, it was a bad bounce. Kid from Duxbury went on a breakaway and scored, and then they put an empty netter in, I believe, with around 20, 30 seconds left to win the game 3-1. But
What time did it end?
it ended at 11:36.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
But if you're going to have a high school game end that late,
A lot of kids running to catch the MBTA last train out on a Sunday
it's got to
night.
be a
So.
championship game.
And a lot of Uber drivers were busy that night. So
Was there
Yeah.
a hard stop as far as how late that could have started at 1, 2? I mean,
the game couldn't have. I mean, we probably wouldn't have started past a certain point, but I heard that was going to be the last overtime in the game before us, so we wouldn't have probably started any later than 10:15.
Really the adults that were tired. For the teenagers, they're like, this is our time. What are you
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah. So
Congratulations to them, Coach Burns, and everybody who's part of that program. That
Yeah.
was just an amazing
it was
run. and
it's
to
exciting.
watch
So
that.
it was good.
Yeah, it's always something to build on for next year, right?
Absolutely. So, the fall report. So just I want to go through that pretty quickly. I know you have it on the paper, just to read it out loud. We had 515 student athletes competing in 10 different sports with 23 teams at 3 different levels. We had 9 teams qualify for the postseason tournament. Field hockey, football, golf, boys soccer, girls volleyball, both cross-country teams, and girls swim. We had 33 student athletes that were recognized as Middlesex League All-Stars. We had 8 student athletes recognized as All-Conference, 4 students recognized as Eastern Mass All-Stars, 2 student athletes recognized as League MVPs, and Hannah Curtin was recognized as the Eastern Mass Girls Soccer D2 North Player of the Year. The football team hosted their first playoff game in school history. The golf team placed 3rd at the D2 State Championships. Boys soccer advanced to the D2 North quarterfinals. Girls volleyball advanced to the D1 North quarterfinals, and the girls swim team placed 11th at D2 State Championships. And last but obviously not least is the girls soccer team that won the D2 State Championship, and were league champions as well. They went 22-1-0, and it's the first state championship the girls soccer team had since, I believe, 2002, which is fantastic. A great season for them, and we'll see if we can do it again next year.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah, exactly. So-
So before I open it up to questions of the committee that are really sort of more accounting related, I want to ask you about swimming, change of school start time in place this year. Can you just remind us, what did we do in terms of access to a pool? What was the time change like? Has that been beneficial for families? Are there other consequences for the 26 and 42 kids who swim?
It was slightly beneficial. There was we just changed the start time in the morning to a half an hour later than we ordinarily would go. We can't get the pool at a different time. We just shortened practice by a half an hour. So instead of having a 2-hour block, we have an 1.5-hour block that we use to give the kids a little extra time to sleep in. We can't get any pool time after school, but we do have a great relationship with Medford High School, and they give us the pool in the fall. Well, no, I shouldn't say give us the pool, but we rent the pool in the fall and the winter. But the availability is great in terms of they let us have meets at no extra cost throughout the seasons. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, questions for Mr. Uria? Mark's going to join us for a discussion afterwards on fees for next year at some level, but you've got the Munis run on the various sports.
So if I can just run through that real quick?
Yeah, please.
So when we look at this, if we look at, for instance, cheering, the first column, after we go past account description, original appropriation, that is what we budgeted the expenditures as well as the revenue from user fees. So when we look at the original appropriation of the parentheses for $8,750, that's what we projected to take in revenue from user fees. The adjusted would be if we had to make any adjustments for expenditure lines. We sometimes move money within lines due to a need for increased expenditures, or expenditures were less and we're going to move that budgeted amount to another line. The actual, year-to-date actual, for instance, with cheering, we took in $5,825 in user fees. So in the available, it shows the $29.25 in parentheses. That would be a deficit. We took in less than what we had anticipated. When we look then down at the bottom, we see total revenue. We had budgeted taking in $8,750. We actually took in the $58.25, showing the deficit of $29.25. The total expenses for cheering was we had budgeted $7,551. We had to transfer in an additional $250 for expenses. Our revised budget then was $7,801. We spent $5,667. There's $2,135 left of budgeted expenditures. That can be moved to another sport should we have a need. I'm anticipating that we'll need to move some money to a certain transportation line after Sunday night's bus when we get that invoice. So that's how it works. At the end of the year, any expense lines that are not fully expended, the money just stays in the athletic revolving account. Typically, the fall sports do not fully sustain themselves. We wind up doing the journal entry, moving the allocation from the local budget over into the athletic revolving account right around mid-fall sports, and then that money helps offset. And then as we get into the winter months, user fees, we see more revenue coming in user fees.
Okay.
And Mark and I go through the lines often together to make sure that we're hitting on target, and if Mark notices that he's taking in less revenue in specific areas, he adjusts the spending to make sure that he's not going over budget from his total bottom line budget that was approved.
So a question for you about process. When committee is looking at your report, that column on the left, original appropriation, generally speaking, that number is not going to match what, for instance, the committee had in our FY19 budget book, right? So can you remind the committee why those two numbers look different?
So what happens is that over the course of the winter and spring months, Mark goes through and continuously is updating his budget. Changes in officials, changes in away versus home games, changes with even his coaching staff. So it's the bottom line number for athletics budget that's voted. Mark basically has to live within that number. And then, again, we offset with revenue. If he's taking in less than anticipated, he adjusts his budget to make sure that we're not overspending.
And so, in other words, the committee would have voted an FY19 budget. You remember what happened at Springtown meeting. We did not get the number we voted. That's partly why there was a motion for world language, if you remember, on the floor. So there's a number for athletics, broken down or not, that goes into the budget we vote. At the end of the day, we get what we get from town meeting. And so there's an adjustment there as well.
So the adjustment actually was offset by the increase in user fees. So it was a local appropriation, was less than what we had originally been presented to the committee. We did the increase in user fees. That closed the gap for the athletic budget.
Great.
So can I just ask?
Please, go ahead.
So the amounts that come in from the town appropriations
Yes.
show up
So
where?
it's a line transfer.
Okay.
So what happens is that it funds all of these budget amounts for expenditures.
So I have another question for Ellen, unless you're,
No, I'm done.
is that good? So can you, remembering that we have like 3 or 4 budget adjustments throughout the year, given our new approach, right? And so instead of just the fall readjustment, we do it periodically to account for where we have overruns or surpluses. Some of these sports are very close between, total revenue, total expense, when you look at the original appropriation and the revised budget. So cheering, you talked about, was a perfect example. We're not off by any orders of magnitude. I think the same is true for swim. But there's a big delta there for things like football.
Right.
So can you talk to the committee about, you or Mark talked to us about football, I mean, same orders of magnitude actually around golf.
Right.
Well, tell us why we sort of carry those numbers the way we are as a budget versus actual expenses.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have to budget for things like almost a just in case because we don't know whether we're going to play a certain amount of home games, say in football or not, because, we could host potentially 2 more playoff games
Right.
than we actually may, or we might have to travel for 2 playoff games, right? So they're going to be higher depending on what we do.
Right.
And then, if that doesn't end up happening, then we save that money, or we spend that money and maybe a little bit more. So we kind of have to plan for it
Yep.
because of the fact that we don't know, and if it happens and we don't plan for it, it'll be an issue. So, and sometimes like say hockey, for instance, like a sport like hockey, when you go deep into a tournament, you have all those transportation costs. Sometimes, like Alan said before, the money's not there, and then we have to kind of move money into it, or vice versa.
When we go into, just use that example, so if we go into a tournament, there's always going to be an MIAA tournament. Somebody's playing.
Sure.
But ice is not cheap. Ice is usually between 8 and 9% of our total athletic budget in this district. So when the hockey team goes deep into the postseason, are we paying for that ice, or does MIAA sort of give us?
So we're paying for the practice ice
Practice ice.
because we have to keep practicing.
Yep.
We do not pay for the game ice for boys hockey at all.
Okay.
We pay for the preliminary round in girls hockey. So this year we hosted a girls hockey game.
Yep.
So we have to pay for that ice. We have to pay all the expenses that come with renting the rink. The clock person,
Sure.
the 2 officials and all that stuff.
Yep.
So the trainer. Yep. Well, the trainer's our trainer, so they're there anyway. But.
Yep.
So during the budget process, Mark does budget, additional funds for transportation in certain in certain sport lines, knowing that what past history has been that they've made X number of postseason plays, so he factors in transportation and things like that. So we know that there is funding built into the lines for, should a team make postseason.
And
Yeah,
sometimes if I underestimate and it's more, it could be due to factors like a location of a state championship is further away,
Yeah.
much further away than anticipated or than was ever in the past. So now we have to pay for a bus that's way more expensive than we ever anticipated because it was never there before, and now we're going. So, or additional costs like, I think like the last 2 years we've gone to the final rounds in golf, and that's just extra money too.
So, Mark, my last question is, can you share with the committee what sort of what assumptions you make in the budgeting process for a forward fiscal year, understanding that, whether just through rumor at the middle school where you got a lot of kids, you suddenly have a bolus of kids playing a sport and you think maybe there's going to be a new sub-varsity team that we haven't had before, but you're not sure, kids haven't tried out. My understanding is you're making some allowances, and it might be whether it's field time or ice, maybe transportation, but it doesn't include some things like coaches, right? You're not budgeting for coaches for teams we don't have yet, but you're making some accommodation to
Sure,
sort of
yes.
accommodate a changing student body. Just share with us how does that work?
Yeah, so especially with the sports that we've had in the past and lost because the numbers have fluctuated, I've kept those numbers, like those numbers that we had in the past in the budget, say for like girls JV ice hockey, right? So we had enough in the past for to have JV girls ice hockey games, and our coach, the varsity team, was nice enough to kind of coach both teams because the numbers weren't so big where it was completely 2 separate teams, but we still had them, enough ice for them and budgeted for games and transportation and officials for them. So we've kept that in the budget because I assume every year that the numbers will be up so that we can run a team. Because I want to be able to run a team if the numbers are there. Similar situation with girls freshman softball. So same thing, right? So like, transportation and officials and things like that, so that if the numbers are there, we want to be able to run that team. So.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Other
one other-
questions from
One
Mark?
other thing
Yeah.
that just occurred to me, because
Sure.
we were talking about not running a team. I see that there's, like there's no boys volleyball. Was that just because they weren't interested? Is there boys?
Oh, so sorry, that's a spring sport. So
Oh,
girls volleyball is in the fall, boys volleyball is in the spring.
Okay, how
Yep.
about swim? Is that the same thing with swimming?
Same thing as swim. So girls swim is in the fall, and boys swim is in the winter. So you'll see the boys swimming report in the winter summary.
And we have 2 golfs, right?
We do not have 2 golf teams. We have female athletes that play on the golf team in the fall. If the numbers, were ever to rise greatly on the female side, that's something that I would bring to the table as well to offer. They play in the spring, so technically girls golf is in the spring and boys is in the fall. And the girls that we have competing in the fall will play in the girls state championships in the spring,
Okay.
which they have the last couple of years.
Oh,
Yep. So we send them, and the MIA makes exemptions for them if they're playing a spring sport. They can miss that day. It's during the school day. They can miss that day of school and still play their spring sport after the golf tournament.
got it.
So it's an accommodation they make. So
Brian, you were going to ask a question?
A couple of easy questions. These are all fall sports, so I assume the year-to-date actuals are final. They're not bills still coming in for any of these things?
No, the only ones that we're still have some bills to process were some transportations, and those, the encumbered amount is
Already-
is the amount,
okay.
is the amount encumbered. So unless we get something that neither one of us is anticipating.
I'm not anticipating anything else.
that-
Not for the fall, anyway.
Right, so we've, and Mark does a great job making sure that requisitions are done timely, that we are really getting into a great practice of making sure that everything's encumbered before we buy it or before we procure it.
Okay. And just as one more foundational
Yeah.
question. For instance, if we have soccer boys, that encompasses all levels. This is,
Yes.
Yep.
I can't remember if we have freshman, JV, and
Yes.
varsity.
We do.
All.
Yep.
It's all in there.
Yes.
So when we look at the year-to-date actuals, let's say it's the expenses were 25 and the revenue from athletic user fees were 23.8. Just about broke even as far as the revenues funding that. But that's that's an aggregate for all 3 levels of that.
Exactly.
And is
So-
it, would we imagine, or do you have data if one is more expensive? I assume varsity is more expensive than JV,
so
but
that
maybe
would
that's
be-
not true.
So that would be something that Mark could provide you.
Yeah.
additional
I didn't know if it was just, I don't need the numbers, I just generally
So
speaking, they go to a
generally,
tournament and stuff.
so generally varsity teams, not generally, always varsity teams are more expensive because the officials that you pay more to officials at the varsity level than you do at the sub-varsity level. And varsity always has more games than the sub-varsity level, so they're going to travel more. There's going to be additional expenses with those additional games. And a lot of times, JV and maybe a freshman team they'll share a bus. So you definitely have to go for the varsity game. So you could kind of say you're splitting it, but the varsity is always going to be going,
Okay.
and the sub-varsity might jump on the bus and play at the same time as the varsity at a
Okay.
different field location.
That's
Yeah.
very helpful, just background so I can understand going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
How about this side of the table? Any questions for Mark? Well, before we move on to a discussion about fees, any thoughts from you, Judy, on this fall report? Anything you see you thought was noteworthy?
I just want to commend Mark and our coaching staff for doing an incredible job supporting our athletes and encouraging them to excel both on and off the field. Mark has done a lot of work around sportsmanship and around making sure that we hold our coaches and our students to high standards. We've done a lot of work to evaluate coaches and give them feedback. And our coaches, as you can see by the amount that we allocate for coaches, it's one of the smaller budget lines. Our coaches make very little for the thousands of hours they work, but they are held to high standards. They interact well with parents and student athletes. And I think for many of us, the participation on a team or in the band or in a musical is one of the highlights of your high school career. And so I think Mark works really hard to make it look easy. But the number of sports, the number of athletes we have, and the number of our teams that go on to postseason play is kind of astonishing, given that we are in a very competitive league and our students, you would not expect, we have a disproportionate, I think, participation in postseason play. Almost all of our teams go on to the playoffs and they do very, very well, to have state champions or teams going, I mean, to have two in the same year going to the finals, one winning so far. Who knows what the spring will bring. I just think I really want to commend you for that. And he's a careful steward of the resources, and doesn't ever ask for anything without trying to find a way to pay for it in some other way. He also works incredibly well with the booster and supporter groups, and you'll hear later tonight of a donation that you'll be asked to consider. And I think part of being an athletic director is interacting with members of the community to be sure that we get support where we can. And so I just want to thank you for your continued excellence.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I know someone probably wants to know, I'm very anxious. I've had so many meetings this week, I haven't gotten over to the new turf fields, but how are the tryouts going on the new fields?
So these are the first 2 days, yesterday and today, and it's great. It's great not having to cram everyone in the gym. It's been nice that the last 2 days were, very nice out anyway. So, but yeah, most of the teams are outside, which is great. It makes a huge difference to not only myself, but obviously to the kids and the coaches.
So in terms of readiness to play baseball and softball in the new fields, how much prep is going to be required?
We're good to go.
Good to go.
Lights are operating on both fields now?
No
The
lights yet.
lights are going to be hooked up. I believe they have a date. I think it's a wishful date of April 10th. So that's when Eversource is going to come out and hook up finally the power, and it's going to be good to go after that. But as far as if you don't need the lights, which we probably wouldn't for a 4 o'clock game right now. Well, I know we wouldn't because it's light out plenty after that. So we're good to play games there right now, baseball, softball.
So the fall will be where we really make use of it in the dark, in terms of practices.
Yep.
I think the other thing that's, if you haven't sort of lived through trying to get baseball fields ready while there's still snow and getting someone out there to rebuild the mound and line the fields, and it's a huge expense, and so these new fields are really going to help the program just get right off to a start.
And I want to thank the DPW too while I'm here for everything they do. I mean, the efforts, when I call them, they're really accommodating, and they do a lot for the athletic department in getting the fields ready. So I'm very thankful to them. So
Thank you very much, Mark. So stick around at the table. So we're going to roll into our fee discussion for transportation and athletics for next school year. Judy, who wants to tee this up?
So this is not a decision-making effort. It's more of a continuation of our previous conversation, and I'm hopeful that we will not have to consider raising fees for either transportation or athletics should we get a sufficient budget to do that after the ballot question next week. One of the things that Ellen was asked to produce is on page 12. More data around how many bus passes we sell and of which kind, and how many are free and reduced. And so this is mainly just a chance for you to ask additional questions about either athletics fees or transportation fees as we take this up again at our next meeting, or not, depending on the outcome of the ballot question. So if you, Ellen, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that, I know that Zena had asked any questions regarding the bus passes and really dissected it and drilled down as much as I could to get all the information. So really, the one area that really resonated with me is that we're bringing, transporting approximately 401 students to after-school programming. And
How many again?
401 have.
That's
bus
an
passes.
elementary school.
Thank you.
There you go. Right.
Knew you were going to go there.
Yeah.
And that of our fleet of buses that we have are doing routes in the afternoon, we have 4 that exclusively transport students to after-school programming, and then an additional 5 that have stops built into their routes to drop students off at programming. So that's a lot of students and a lot of buses, and that's just something that I really, as we go through and have more discussions after the election next week, really just want you to be aware of exactly where even the breakdown of where we're bringing, where we have kiddos going to. Close to 300 are going over to Mystic between the two programs over there. So,
Can I ask a question?
Please, go
So
ahead.
the more than one program,
Yes.
that's where
So we
they
have,
go.
so we have students, we have about 12 who split their afternoons going Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here, Tuesday and Thursday here. So meaning they could be going over to Mystic a couple of afternoons a week. They could be going to Sarah. Another day they could be going over to Chinese culture. It just means that they have multiple locations that they go to.
Do we have some, just on that note, if I can jump in, Zena, are there some kids who maybe go to after school Monday, Wednesday, Friday and are on a home bus Tuesday, Thursday as well?
Right.
Okay. So my sense is once you get to like third grade, so most of those after school programs will say you're K2, you're either here Monday through Friday or you're not here. The older the kid gets, the more sort of flexibility they'll offer to parent schedules.
Right, and also with the Sarah, their programming is only certain months, certain times of the year. So we only see those kiddos going over for a couple months, then they're back on their home bus, and then going over, you know, depending on what programming is offered. So it's, you know, it's, I will say this, you know, Nancy Clark in my office has done a tremendous job working with the bus company to make sure that these routes are, you know, are great and that we really have a good understanding of who's going where in the afternoons.
So I think this might be a good time just to remind the committee that Ellen and I are working on a request for proposal for an outside vendor to come in and do school-based 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. care. At all of our schools, lunch has its own program already. And that might have an impact on the number of students who choose to stay at school rather than to be transported elsewhere, or it may not. But that's just something that if parents are not yet signed up for an after-school program, once we have the request for proposals responded to by the outside organizations, then we'll select one and recommend it and enter into a contract.
Is that RFP out or going out?
It's going out very quickly. It's
Yes,
coming out within the next
I'm
week.
writing it right now, so I'm anticipating that it will be out, all the advertisements will be done within the next 2 weeks.
On that note, I just want to point out there are wait lists on some of these programs, so you don't assume that it's only 401 kids who have a need to go to these after-school programs. If there was space, that number would easily be closer to 600.
Can I finish? How do you charge kids who go on some days to a program, after-school program, and on other days to their home bus,
if
since
you-
they're different fees?
Nope, it's a flat $90 per student for transportation to any after-school programming. So if they're only going 3 days a week, they're still, because otherwise we would, our menu of
Right. that's what-
transportation fees would be very
So
long.
regardless of how many times they take
Exactly.
a home bus, if they take the after-school bus even
Right.
once a week,
Right,
it's the same fee?
correct.
Okay, that's good.
And the only dedicated buses we have are the ones going to Mystic. The
They-
other schools are
They're
on
combination.
other routes.
Right, we actually have one of the 5 buses does make an initial stop over at Mystic, so for the most part, they're full of kids going primarily to Mystic, but they're also on some of those, buses that were transport only to after-school program, they're also making another stop, say, at the Chinese Culture
Okay.
School, that it's combinations, but they're stopping over at Mystic.
Okay.
So I think this is something that committee probably needs to discuss at some point, because we've had many, many requests for other after-school programs would like us to transport there. And it's just not sustainable, given the number of students. Many of the buses are already full. We couldn't transport more students if they signed up.
Right.
And we're subsidizing that very heavily. It's a significant additional cost to the district, and as transportation costs go up, we've got to really take a look at that after-school bus.
But is it fair to say that this is sort of like the minimum number of students who would be impacted if we change the fee, or, you know, at
Right.
least? Yeah.
Yes, 400 students would see an increase. I mean, it's 50 cents a day to do it,
Yeah.
additional,
okay.
which doesn't cover the cost of the bus.
And if I could just circle back to what Dr. Evans just said about the requests that are coming in from other organizations, we're talking private preschool programs.
Nonprofit, you mean, or private?
Private. So that are requesting that we add a stop so that students can get on and off at their location for dance schools, other types of things.
Karate.
Karate, exactly.
Theater.
so these programs are all are all nonprofits.
Yes.
So if, we are going to continue that, offering the transportation, I would look to school committee to, to make their recommendation for a guideline, so.
Other questions for Ellen or Mark? So I have a couple that are really centered on athletics. When might the committee hear a proposal to lease a van? Is that gonna come in the spring, and it's something we might be using in the
Yes.
fall? Do you need anything from us?
So I need to get the RFP out on the street for, the wraparound care. And then,
Okay.
there were a few things that
It's
I was
next on the
doing
list.
some additional, research on the subject of the athletic, or multi-activity, minibuses.
Yeah.
that
And again, we're thinking like a 12 or 15 passenger van.
We're
like
thinking
3/4.
15.
15 passenger.
We're looking at 15. There has been some discussion among some of my colleagues that I really wanted to hear the outcome as it pertained to plates, some issues regarding insurances and things
Right.
that other people were working through right now. And before we go down that road, I want them to have really solid answers, so it will be easier for us as we work our way through.
So a request I have for both of you is that as you get that proposal baked to come to the school committee table, it seems to me there's some work for the policy subcommittee, because it's not clear. I'd love to know, I mean, if you have an elevator speech about other districts, I'd love to hear it, but I'm assuming other districts do this, but I would expect different districts differ in terms of who's allowed to drive the van,
Yep. Yeah, we have
insurance
need policies.
requirements, and so I think we would need some policies about that to be
We would.
really clear about,
And
what
those-
the expectations are.
And those are things that we will have for you.
Okay. Mark, can you, I don't have it in front of me, but I think somewhere, whether it's in our school committee policies or in the athletic handbook, we represent to our student athletes when we will provide transportation for them. I think for most sports, it's for contests, and maybe for some sports, it's, the downhill team's not like walking to Neshoba Valley, of course, so they're taking a bus, right? Some other teams are sort of on their own to get to practices. However, we represent to families what our transportation obligation is. I guess I have a two-part question. Are we providing transportation to our student athletes similarly to other Middlesex districts? And are we sort of keeping up our end of the bargain? Are we providing transportation, not just to varsity, but sub-varsity? Are we doing what we say we're doing? And if not, do we need to look at fees to provide some more transportation?
No, so we budget to provide transportation to all of our away contests. I gotta be honest, sometimes we schedule transportation and sometimes it may or may not show up. Our bus company's been better this year, I believe.
There's
A lot
been
better.
history, I'm aware of that.
But, there are a few times where, buses don't show up and it's either we send the kids home or some of the parents just say, hey, we're going to carpool to an event. And we've been fortunate. It hasn't happened that often, but it does happen. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't. And I think that happens in a lot of places, not just in Winchester. But yeah, so we don't provide buses for practices for any of our teams. And we don't provide transportation to games to places where we practice for the most part, unless it's a place that is too far away, like Neshoba Valley or Weston Ski Track for both ski teams.
Okay.
So, for instance, we don't provide transportation to, from the school to Knowlton Stadium for football game or whatever, right? So we don't provide transportation to O'Brien Ice Rink for boys or girls hockey because that's our home rink.
It's considered home, yeah.
And we don't provide transportation there.
Okay.
Yeah. And if there is a situation where, say, we're playing in Stoneham, and coach talks to the kids and and the parents get back to us, and parents get back to the coach and they say, listen, this is closer to our house than it is. It's going to take us more time to drive to the high school, then drive home, then drive to the game. We just rather all meet at Stoneham Arena, where we may or may not practice once in a great while. We'll do that. But if it's far away, like if it's going to be an issue, we always provide away transportation. We have the money for it. We pay for it.
So I raised it because I think, well, you mentioned the ski team. I know it's, so what we provide is a little different to based on the sport in those extreme cases where it's far away.
Correct.
I think from time to time, parents sort of their kids get to the high school and they're student athletes and they realize how they're getting from point A to point B, and sometimes that may be with other students. Kids are sophomores, juniors, they get their JOL, they're not really supposed to have, it's just immediate family, it's in the car, so there's always some anxiety about that.
Sure.
I got to give Kate Fosberg, our championship swimmer from a year ago, a lot of credit because she actually represented the swim team down at Town Hall talking about the potential for a pool on Skilling's Field. And one of the things that Kate talked about was how important it is for those girls to be carpooling early in the morning and the bonding experience in the car. They're talking about the team, they're talking about swimming, they're talking about school, they're talking about what they've been doing over the weekend. So, just like people will say hockey's great for the locker room experience, I think those girls will say the carpool experience has been really good for them as well. So, but from time to time, I do get feedback and concern from parents about
Sure.
shouldn't we be providing X, Y, Z? And it really isn't, I think we need to be sort of flexible, right? And look at it on a case-by-case basis. I'm just most interested in being sure that we've got the fees to do what it is we say we're doing. And if we don't, that's got to factor into part of the equation. Right?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are doing what we say we do in terms of transportation.
Great. Any other questions for Mark?
So I have a question mostly to where this is going to go next meeting.
Okay.
I would like to ask that, I assume we're going to get, no matter what happens in the override, we're going to get a recommendation as far as what fees should be for next year under all the different eventualities.
It would be my hope not to increase fees next year if we have a favorable outcome on the override.
And that's also my
That's the
thought
plan.
process.
But I think
Are
I
you
know
asking whether we're going to
I think I
vote
know
on-
where you're headed.
I'd like to have a chance to, I think we should have a chance to review them before we vote on them, maybe a subsequent meeting, so that we can, I don't know where you thought I was going.
We're going to use the tier word.
I know I'm not bringing that word up today.
Okay.
I swore I wouldn't bring that word up today, but,
It's always our goal not to increase fees from year to year unless we absolutely have to. So we'll take another look as we review the winter revenues and see, I think when you have revolving accounts, sometimes there's a balance that you can apply to the next year in order to stave off a fee increase for one more year. At some point, if the demand for after-school transportation to childcare or other programs continues to grow, we're going to have to address that. But regular transportation, I think we've budgeted for no fee increase, and for athletics, we've budgeted for no fee increase.
fantastic.
And so that's my plan, but we should review in any case as we get more information into later in the spring.
Thank you.
So there's nothing else. Why don't we move on to the next item? Cut you loose tonight.
Do you want to have him, you want to move to the donation so he can speak about the batting cages?
Sure, we can do that.
Page
if you like.
31.
Can we jump forward to 6A. Find it here. Is that page 35?
31.
31?
Yeah.
Yeah, page 31. So we have a gift from the Sachem Youth Baseball Softball Association for 2 batting cages, a portable outfield fence at Skilling's Field. Take it away.
Yeah, so the plan, well, obviously there's a beautiful field out there, and there's no batting cage facility, which is a big deal in terms of getting kids reps and keeping kids active either during practice or, even for youth baseball or softball. Having someone being able to hit in a space where is completely netted off, or pitch for that matter, where it's completely netted off and not in danger of getting hit by a foul ball or a ball, is a big deal. There are plenty other Middlesex League School facilities that have what we're proposing and requesting. So, so that's where we're at. And I don't know, Rich, if you want to talk a little bit about what.
Yeah, well, I guess, as you know, first of all, my name is Rich McKenzie. I'm the president of the organization. I'm joined by Mike Degnan, who served our board for many years. We've been a huge supporter of the baseball and softball programs. This was one of those items that was originally included in the design plan for Skilling's Field, but unfortunately it had to be eliminated when the budget sort of increased rapidly. So we thought that this would be an opportunity for us to continue to support the high school baseball and softball programs.
So could one of you talk about the location of this then with respect to that plan? I know we don't have a site plan, but can you describe generally where this would be
Sure.
located on Skilling's?
The plan is to locate a double-wide cage along the first baseline of the baseball field, which would be the third baseline of the softball field.
Okay.
It will be located outside what I would call that short black fence that separates the turf from the grass area.
So the reason I ask is that, as you know, we have contaminated soils at Skilling's. Many of them were removed, some left in place. DEP signed off on a cap. And my understanding is that there's some limitation about penetrations on Skilling's field of, depending upon where you are. It sounds so, the closer you move towards Main Street, the more you head towards risk associated with soils. The more you head towards the high school, soils were cleaner, there were less restrictions. So when you said this is something that was actually part of the plan, makes me feel better.
Yep.
Is because this requires a 2.5-foot penetration into the ground, is this something that engineering department has seen and they're comfortable with?
Yeah, so we had meetings with Meg White at Town Hall,
Perfect.
and it was approved, and the specs and everything were approved.
Correct.
And it's in probably the best location in terms of what you mentioned, the not penetrating the cap.
Yeah.
And it's in a great location because it's almost equidistant between baseball home plate and softball home plate.
Yep.
So it's not as though we're favoring one side over the other, which is always my fear. I like to be equal with the program, so it's equal between the baseball and softball home plate, which is great. And it's almost when you're coming from the high school and walking under the tunnel to the field, it'll be located in front of you.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the
I
gift?
just have one. Mark, you mentioned that it's an important part of practice for these kids to be able to be in batting cages like this. What are they doing now?
So they're making do with what they have. There's a batting cage in the gym. We can go in there and get work done. Pitching, hitting. Ideally, you want to not be in a separated space from when you're running a practice. You want to be able to send kids over to get work done,
Right.
where you can manage them as a
Within
coach.
earshot, yeah.
They go to indoor batting cages.
Yeah, so they go to indoor batting cages as
Pay
well.
themselves.
From time to time, they'll go and, hit it indoor cages.
And is
this
that
will-
part of the softball, baseball budget now, or are parents paying for that independently?
No, that's almost a bit like the boosters kind of come in and help when needed for that. So this will alleviate the need for the most part, for that. When it's bad weather, that still may take place from time to time, but not as much
Okay,
with
great.
the good weather and the turf facility, so
Now, what's the lead time on this? We approve this tonight. When might we expect to see something going in?
that's.
Quickly. is the
Ready to
goal.
go?
We've been in touch with Jay Gill.
Mm-hmm.
He's offered to sort of lay the foundation, and we were in front of the select board last night and gained their approval. So hopefully within maybe 2 to 3 weeks,
Great.
if all goes to plan.
Well, thank you very much to the association.
Do you have
Oh, I'm
any
sorry,
questions
Zena.
on it? Forgive my ignorance, but does this have like a machine that throws the pitches at the kids, or?
So, can I?
Please.
So I want to thank Mike for this too, because he went out and got a pitching machine for the baseball program, and the softball program had one already. Thanks to Mike's generosity, there is a machine out there that we can use in the cage, which is fantastic.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. And my follow-up is securing these batting cages when our teams aren't on the field. Is that
Sure.
a concern? Is there anything that does it become a community resource? I'm not clear on that.
So it'll be a community resource in terms of the youth programs will be able to use it, which is fantastic. But it works much like the netting system at the field now. So it's basically 6 poles. Is it 6 poles? 6 total poles, and then all netting that goes around it. And it's
No, it's just netting.
no, it's just netting, and it's removable too, so it can go up and down, and you can, like, when we're not in season, we can take the netting out so that it doesn't get damaged or it doesn't get, by the wind or weather or, any of that kind of stuff, so.
So, Mike and Rich, thank you for the generosity on the machine and from the association. If there are no more questions, happy to take a motion on this gift.
Would move to approve with gratitude the gift from the Sachem Youth Baseball Softball Association for 2 batting cages and a portable outfield fence at Skilling Field as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Thank you very much.
So I just want to make one more comment. I want to again thank Mike for getting the ball rolling with this and Rich for helping us help come to fruition here. But without the generosity of people like Mike and Rich in not only our baseball and softball programs, but a lot of our programs, it just makes our coaches, our kids' lives and experiences just so much better when they get to compete, or participate in our programs with like little things. No, I shouldn't say little things and
Thanks.
very big things like this, right? So I just want to say thank you from the athletic department as well.
I hope we get an invitation. Are you going to do someone throw out the opening pitch at the
At the first
big
game, yeah, yes, yeah.
So maybe let us know so some of us can come and see baseball, softball.
Sounds good. Will do.
Hopefully it'll be 80 degrees and
Right.
Fingers crossed.
Likely
So.
at 10 p.m. on April 8th.
Yeah, exactly, right, yeah. So, yeah.
We can dream.
Very much, really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you for coming tonight, Mark. Nate, you heading out? Thanks for coming
Thanks,
tonight.
Nate.
It's good to
Thanks,
see you. So Judy or Ellen, FY19 budget update, back to section 5C. Pardon me. Page 13.
So our original budget allocation for FY19 was $50,272,465. We have spent through March 14th, $29,569,115. We have another $19,071,935 encumbered, the bulk of which is salaries. I am projecting an additional $708,062 that will be encumbered for future expenditures that I'm aware of, that I'm pretty confident will happen. That leaves us right now with a balance of $923,352 for additional expenditures that were earmarked in the FY19 budget. We're now well into March, halfway through March. So from this point on through May, I'll be looking and doing projections probably every 3 weeks. And then once we get into May and June, I'll be doing it probably just about every week. My office is already starting to look at purchase orders, making sure that anything that's been open now for more than a couple of months, that we're going back, looking, we're scrubbing things as early now as we were doing last summer. I still have concerns about a couple of lines that are typically within special education. We have seen an increase just in the last few weeks in expenditures for contracted services for special education, testing, ABA services, things of that nature. I'm also anticipating the transportation, just because we've had quite a few students going out into 45 in extended evaluation placements, that our transportation costs will exceed what was budgeted. And that's why you'll see in the transportation line for special education, I have a projected encumbrance of $125,000, and I've already identified funding for that. We have had a significant amount of leaves of absences this year amongst the schools that have resulted in some salary savings for portions of leaves that have been unpaid, but at the same time, we've had some that have resulted in additional cost to us, because we're paying the teacher who's out on the leave, and then we're paying the substitute as well. And in a couple of cases, the substitute's been a little bit more expensive, depending on what the subject is being taught. So I think that for right now, for where we are, I'm comfortable with where we are right now. I have spoken to Dr. Evans and have suggested that, we pull back a little bit on spending that we don't necessarily need to do. I've had some conversations with the high school principal, and he said that, he's not anticipating any big unanticipated expenditures. Everything that he has planned for, he's doing. So again, I think that we're in a great place. I really want to commend all the building principals, especially the newer principals, Mr. Lynn, as well as
Ms. Phelan?
Ms. Phelan, thank you. Really, for newer principals, their managing of their budgets has been commendable.
Great. Questions for Ellen?
I have one. How are we doing on technology?
Technology, we are doing, I think, well. We have not transferred any money out of the technology area to offset costs. I've actually, when we were doing transfers, we had gone over in our software by $42,000. But we had some salary savings, about $20,000 in personnel savings. So I was able to for technology for a myriad of reasons. We had some changes in staffing. We had some that contributed to that. So I was able to move that money back into the software line and then only have to, and not have to touch the, really the technology line, the educational.
We've been talking about
Right.
with O'Brien and all those pieces that we knew we had underfunded
Right.
the software line. That was not a surprise
Right.
to us. That
Right.
We went over in that line, and then that was the same thing that we'll have to do for next
Right.
year if we don't have the budget. So
Right.
to answer your question, we're doing okay, but
Right.
it can't go like this or it won't
Right.
continue okay.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
for the educational
Let me
line.
be blunt.
Thank you, Jen. I mean, we did have to take money out of our device line to offset the software costs, but, I mean, we're
Borrowing here and,
we're okay, but.
It's okay if this is the only time.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's not, then I'm gonna look to other areas of the budget to see where we can, move some money to help, bring technology back.
If you could, in the future, just, explain that as
Sure.
it goes, as we move through each year, it would
Okay.
be good. I think it's useful for us to know, for the school
Okay.
committee to know.
That's her legacy question, so we gotta be sure you
That's
do that
one.
in future meetings. It's good.
There might be more.
Oh, okay. We're not done
Now
yet.
that,
The night
now
is
that
young.
you've triggered my thinking.
I was just gonna say.
Other comments, questions for Ellen from this side? So Ellen, I have one.
Sure.
For teachers who, so we afford an opportunity to, for like outside professional development, continuing education and so forth. We could call it, I think, tuition reimbursement in
Yes.
our collective bargaining language. Does that show up on your page 2?
Let me get to my page
And I
2.
see a tuition, I see a summer, I see a fall, I see a
Yes.
spring.
Yes.
So what is the distinction? So the 3 seasons I get, but
Yeah.
what is just tuition with no season on it? What is that?
Tuition with no season attached to it is anyone who's not a member of Unit A. So the teachers, Unit A, tuition reimbursements come out of the summer, fall, and spring, because the teacher's contract delineates how much money is allocated to tuition reimbursement,
Yep.
and then further delineates what percentage of that pot of money goes to each semester for summer, fall, and spring. And then individuals who have it in their contracts for tuition reimbursement, or to attend a conference, things of that nature, get paid out of the regular tuition line.
Okay, and so given the limits that we've established and deadlines for filing receipts for
Yes.
reimbursement, you feel good about this line?
Yes, I do.
Including that reimbursement? I mean, it's
Yes.
small numbers, but
Yes.
it's there. Great, okay.
And I really would like to commend Jessica in Jen's office. She has done an outstanding job as we have moved towards this model of breaking down the teacher tuition by semester, of really making sure that, that people are getting their paperwork in, especially as more colleges and universities have moved towards courses that you have more time to complete the class.
1 year until.
1 year to finish it. That she's really done a great job in saying, okay, you fall semester's over. We're now well into December, January. You haven't completed the class. You think you're going to complete it in the spring. Okay, let me close the purchase order, reopen it in the spring. So we're really doing a great job.
Okay. So I have one request.
Sure.
This is direct output from Munis, is that right?
It's direct output with Munis, with me adding in the projected encumbrance and making the transfers.
So
a
my
spreadsheet.
request is, for future reports, and I think, does it not show up under athletics that we looked at tonight? Yeah, it does. So, going back to the athletics report, we have cost line items.
Yes.
I'm trying to say, account numbers.
Sure. You'd like to see the account numbers?
We've done that in the past, and I think it's helpful. I mean, in this moment, we're looking at words, we understand what the words mean, but I think for school committee members to try to compare this back to where we were either in October when we do a big adjustment.
Sure.
Or to prior fiscal years, I think it's just helpful because, you know, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can go track it back to a line item of the
Certainly.
previous year.
Absolutely.
I realize you got a limited amount of real estate on the page, but
That's
that's
fine.
been helpful
Okay.
to us in the past.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. If there's nothing else. why don't we
Need a
move on?
vote just to accept the
Oh.
report.
We do, we need a vote to accept.
I move to approve FY19 budget transfers presented in the report of March 14, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for that,
Thank
Judy.
you.
Sure.
Unanimous, Rita. So Morocco and Lynch, SOI, submission update. I'm not sure who's supposed to talk about this.
I can just very briefly talk about it if you want, or you can. It's just a summary of yesterday's meeting, basically. So,
And I can tell you about the one that happened last night.
okay, so let's tag team on that. We had a school committee meeting that was scheduled for yesterday with a single agenda item, which was the discussion of the resubmission of the statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for Morocco and Lynch School renovation replacement. As everybody might remember, the previous statements of interest that were submitted, the most recent one was very well received. This is a process where it's an online form to complete. It's fairly dense, lots of information. So it really several parts of the process. The submission gets approved by both the select board and the school committee. And then MSBA considers all of the requests. Last year, you might remember that there were many more requests submitted across the state than MSBA could approve. Correction? Do you have a question? No, okay. We were strongly encouraged by the result. The team from MSBA came out and looked at Lynch very carefully, and I think had one or two other projects statewide not been approved or not been submitted, we could have been in a good position now to be moving forward with a feasibility study. So we are encouraged, and we think that next time might be the charm. So we're hoping that the resubmission will yield a similar result, with finding out at the end of this year in December that we'll move forward. And so at yesterday's school committee meeting, we reviewed again the process. School committee voted to support the resubmission, and you want to talk about select boards?
Sure, so last night, it was the last item they picked up. They voted with no discussion, and some enthusiasm. They voted to co-sponsor the submission for Lynch and for Morocco. Ellen, the one sort of housekeeping question that came up was whether or not their physical signatures are required on any documents before the deadline. So I said I would just circle back with you to verify.
So what will be required is I will contact the select board's administrative assistant, get the certified vote from her once she has her minutes done, and then the signatures are all done electronically. So once everything is submitted, Mrs. Wong, Dr. Evans, you, as well as the chair of the select board, will just go in and audit and electronically. And actually, I don't think it will be, actually, I don't think it's the chair of the select board. I just think it possibly is going to be you, because
Susan signed last
you
time.
signed last year. You had to go in and do it electronically, and it was.
We just have to send the certified copy of their vote.
Yeah.
They don't have to sign it.
Okay,
Okay.
And your vote as well.
Right.
okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sure, we're excited.
And I know you're working hard.
So, yeah, and if we afterwards could schedule some time.
Take another look at it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to the superintendent evaluation.
I was going to go to the bathroom. No.
So, well, I was saying to Aaron on the way into the building tonight, this is, I think this is a subject that all school committee members and maybe superintendents approach with some trepidation. I think the chair always does, just, and I do actually this year, not for what the outcomes are, which I think are really good, but just because I think every chair, every school committee wants to do this well and thoroughly. It's one of the most important things that we do. As you know, a school committee is responsible for the employment of a superintendent, And we all have interaction with Judy throughout the year, but as you are aware, it's a state requirement that we evaluate the superintendent. And so I'm trying to, this is still in my mind a somewhat new thing, if I can put it that way, in that we're using a state rubric. We've used this model for evaluation under 2 prior chairs. The first time we did it, there was a real effort to sort of engage the school committee to kind of participate. And I'm talking about in the public session. I thought Susan was just masterful last year in kind of synthesizing all the input that came in from committee members in her write-up. My plan tonight as chair is frankly to do kind of a hybrid, but that still engages everybody when we get to the summative piece. So if you'll just forgive occasional pauses on my part, just to be sure I'm not missing something along the way. Let me go back to the script I prepared. So each year, as is required by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the school committee assesses the superintendent's progress towards goals previously developed in alignment with our district goals, as well as her performance on 4 standards that are established by the state. The school committee follows the Massachusetts model system for educator evaluation, Part 3, which is the superintendent rubric. It's available online if anybody wants to read it. Dr. Evans' superintendent goals, which were voted by this school committee in early October and are a basis of our evaluation, were developed to follow and support our district goals, which we voted in September. It's worth noting that although this process is thought of as an annual evaluation, the timing of Winchester's municipal elections and the restructuring of the school committee, coupled with the typical summertime leadership team workshops with us that drive new district goals, means that we're actually assessing Dr. Evans' progress on a shortened time frame beginning in late September. I can't underscore that enough, especially for whoever becomes chair next. Please keep this in mind as we discuss progress made on a number of fronts. So in other words, yes, it's an annual evaluation, but we have a school calendar, and the goals are really kind of focused right on the school year. But we have a municipal election calendar that reorganizes this committee. So I feel like always in the summer, and I'm now speaking unscripted, that we're doing a lot of good work and you guys are coming up with some great ideas. We have wonderful workshops and then we're off and we're running, and suddenly it seems like the clock starts running at double speed because we need to keep up with the mid-year evaluations and the summative. So with respect to the evaluation itself, each school committee member has provided me a copy of his or her own independent evaluation of Dr. Evans. And in keeping with past practice as chair of the committee, I've compiled a composite evaluation of the superintendent. It's one that incorporates each member's assessments of her progress towards goals and her performance on the DC standards. Tonight, I will walk everyone through the superintendent evaluation rubric in the order each has used it, and I will summarize the committee's assessments along the way. So first, I will review Dr. Evans' progress towards her 6 superintendent goals. Second, I will share the committee's composite assessment of her progress in the 3 categories of professional practice, student learning, and district improvement. Third, we will review the committee's composite assessment of Judy's performance rating in the 4 DESE standards for evaluation. Those are instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and finally, professional culture. Fourth and last, we will close with the overall summative performance evaluation, at which point I will ask each member to share some thoughts on the superintendent's performance this school year. And then I'll wrap up the committee's rating of Dr. Evans' impact on student learning and invite her at that time to share any questions or thoughts that she may have. But first, because I hate talking for 40 minutes straight, I'd be happy to put you on the spot if you would like to share with the committee and those watching your goals for the school year. If you don't want to do it, I'll
From
read
memory.
them. Right here, I printed them out. You don't need to get into all the bullets.
Didn't want to
Just
miss one.
remind everybody what your goals
sure.
were.
Pop
You
quiz.
could do a little wrap up though.
A wrap.
Hamilton.
Oh,
You can act them out.
I would have done a video. I know. So my philosophy about
This is good. We're keeping it light.
professional practice goals, student learning goals, and district improvement goals. There are really 3 parts to it. And the success or lack of success towards meeting goals is really a shared responsibility that we work very hard to accomplish through the efforts of many people. And I think that I could easily set goals that are easily achievable and exceed all of the goals so as to have a favorable evaluation. But I think that setting goals that are somewhat of a reach is always a good idea. And as the year goes on, because these goals are set as Chris talked about in the summer, sometimes other things come up, like overrides, that take a lot of time, that hinder the pace at which we can achieve these goals. All of these goals can be achieved over time. Finding a way to measure them and report back on them is sometimes a little bit challenging, but I will just summarize them. So I appreciate, it's not my expectation that we will meet or exceed all of these goals by March. I think that some of them will take longer, and some of them will find were not the right goals in the first place and need to be changed the next year. So in terms of professional practice goal, one of the most important things that I do is to hire great leaders and support them and mentor them. And so the first goal has to do with developing a strong and effective district leadership team. And I think we have made great progress, not only with the immediate leadership team, which includes the 7 principals and 6 central office administrators, but also directors, assistant principals, and coordinators. And so the full leadership team in the district is 36 people. 36 people are all evaluators. And so those are the folks we have worked really hard with that group to meet monthly, to do professional development together, to learn together, and some of those sessions have been incredibly rewarding. We've all learned a lot together. The leadership team has worked this year on the power of positive leadership as a theme, and trying to focus not on a deficit model, but on a model that believes that everyone can grow and learn. And so that goal, I think, has been one that I've enjoyed working with the leadership team on, and I think we do have the strongest team we've ever had. And so I want to thank everybody for that. The second is a student learning goal that talks about personalization, meeting the needs of individual learners. And some of the action steps, and I've reported on these in January, had to do with looking at our district curriculum accommodation plan, starting to investigate some innovative structures. This is one of those areas where we've not made the same progress that I would have wanted to because of the overwhelming demands of the budget process. But I still am committed to looking at multi-age, multi-grade, and looping classrooms. And in fact, Michelle and I are going to go and visit a school in town that's using some innovative preschool approaches. And so we're continuing to learn and grow in this area. And I've spoken with some principals who are, should we have sufficient budget, interested in piloting some looping or multi-age classroom configurations, particularly K1 or pre-KK kind of classrooms. So we've made some progress in this, in meeting this goal. I'm really proud of the work that especially Jen and Pam Gerard have done around co-teaching and how effectively that model has been progressing. But all of these require nurturing, meetings, coordination, revisiting what's working, what's not working, consultation, collaboration. It's not a one and done. All of the pieces to this personalization inclusion goal really do require the work of many people. Another district improvement goal is around looking at school schedules, homework, and the school start time initiative. And we've made more progress on some of these than others. The school start time impact will be measured in the next month or two as we do surveys and collect data, and then we'll do a report to you about the first year of implementation. Aside from the issue related to traffic, I've been incredibly happy with the way school start time changes have rolled out. And I think that we will see, I hope, through the Youth Risk Behavior Survey results that our student stress levels have been diminishing as a consequence. We have a lot of work to do on homework and grading practices. And we set an ambitious goal to start talking about that as a community. But our recognition is that we have a lot of work to do internally on this issue before we engage parents and community members. We are doing a lot of work on this issue, but in a fairly traditionally organized district, particularly at the secondary level, change is a slower process than I would like. And so it is a strong focus, but not a public focus at this point. So I would count this as among the goals where we haven't made as much progress as we would have liked, and probably should have revisited this as a goal and re-characterized it more as an internal re-education, rethinking effort. And school schedules is another piece where we're starting to make some inroads with WinBlock. But again, with a new principal at the middle school, kind of slowed down the process of looking at middle school schedules as well. Cultural proficiency, diverse staffing, hiring, instructional materials, these are all hard to measure because they're sort of incremental change. But we continue to make progress on this. And this is one of those goals I'd like to continue into next year and really make it more measurable, particularly around our efforts to attract and hire diverse staff members. And our efforts to acquire materials that are more globally connected and connected to global cultures. I'm very happy with the last two goals. The goal around the McCall expansion plan has been working very well. Ellen and I have worked closely with EFPBC and Meg White and the principal at the middle school to make sure that phase one was strong and completed on time and on budget, and phase two gets a great start. So I'm proud of that accomplishment. I think we're in a good place. The contractor has been selected. The budget looks like we'll be able to do everything we wanted to do. So that I think that goal is well supported. And the last goal has to do with looking at budget. And I have been proud to have worked closely to build the trust, particularly of the Finance Committee and the Select Board members, so that we could work collaboratively with them to establish a target for both an override and an austerity budget that makes sense and that will meet our needs or make it clear what our additional unmet needs are for the FY21 budget. And so I think that goal is one we can be proud of as well, how that's work has unfolded and how we've handled it over the last few months. So some goals are still works in progress. Some, I think, have already been met and exceeded. And so, as always, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. But I'd be happy to answer any questions or take feedback on any of those if that would be helpful.
Well, let's save that till the end. 'Cause
Okay.
What's great is that I can already tell we're sort of on the same page. And I, it's clear to me you've been meeting with school committee members and having some helpful conversations. So let me jump into our composite assessment of Judy's progress on her performance goals, the 6 goals. So first of all, I want to say the school committee found Dr. Evans actually did exceed expectations in 3 of 6 performance goals, met 2, and demonstrated significant progress in 1. Therefore, in no instance did the school committee find little or no progress in her annual goals. So I'll walk through very quickly. Professional practice goal number 1, which is supporting that strong development, the development of strong and effective district leadership teams and integrating new members effectively. Not quite unanimous, but very, very strong bias on the part of the committee towards exceeding the goal. So that was a strong showing, if you will. Under student learning goal, second goal is a student learning goal, supporting instruction that meets the needs of individual learners across all classrooms and grade levels by providing training and reviewing or revising practices and structures. The committee was a little more spread out on this one between significant progress and having exceeded the goal. The majority of the committee felt that, in fact, Dr. Evans has met that goal, and as you heard her say, more work is being done, and we're still early in the school year. Third goal is a district improvement goal, supporting the program improvement by assessing areas for educational innovation and supporting teams as they study and recommend related actions. Really appreciated what Judy just said a moment ago. This continues to be a bit of a work in progress. The committee's rating was really divided between significant progress and having met the goal, with a bias towards significant progress. The second district improvement goal, her goal number 4, is expanding purposeful efforts to ensure that school cultures and climates are supportive, inclusive, and welcoming for all students and families, support practices and systems that promote balance and health in both students and staff members. Again, much like goal number 2, the committee was somewhat split in how to sort of measure progress between significant progress and having exceeded the goal, but the majority of the committee felt that the goal had been met. And then for goal number 5, which is district improvement goal number 3, that is the McCall expansion project, which needs little explanation. Very, very strong bias towards having exceeded that goal. And we're very appreciative of that, obviously. So the 6th goal, district improvement goal 4, is working collaboratively with our town officials and municipal departments towards that strategy for resources of FY20, and of course that includes the override. Once again, very, very strong bias towards having exceeded the goal. So Judy, I'm sure that doesn't come as any surprise to you, but that's sort of my summary then on the goals. I'm going to come back to our composite assessment. So here we have sort of walked through a review of 6 goals. We now have a composite assessment of her progress in these 3 categories, which are professional practice, student learning, and district improvement. So on the basis of each member's kind of evaluation of those metrics, if you will, of the goals, there was a strong bias among the committee members that Judy's professional practice goal has been exceeded. With respect to student learning, a bias towards having met that goal today, and as well with respect to district improvement, strong bias towards having met the goal. I'm going to pivot now, sort of step 3. I'm going to review the committee's composite assessment of Judy's performance rating in those 4 DESE standards for evaluation. So once again, those are I'll describe them as I go through them. The first is instructional leadership. So here we're evaluating whether the superintendent promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by cultivating a shared vision that makes powerful teaching and learning the central focus of schooling. The second standard that we evaluate is management and operations, and that includes promotion of the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by ensuring a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment, using resources to implement appropriate curriculum, staffing, and scheduling. The third standard of the 4 is family and community engagement. Does the superintendent promote the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff through effective partnerships with families, community organizations, and other stakeholders that support the mission of the school district? And fourth is professional culture. Does the superintendent promote success for all students by nurturing and sustaining a school culture of reflective practice, high expectations, and continuous learning for staff? So with that, let us jump into instructional leadership. The school committee was largely split in its evaluation of Dr. Evans against the 5 indicators. Each of these standards has between 4 and 6 indicators to give us some more guidance. The indicators under instructional leadership include curriculum, instruction, assessment, evaluation, and data-informed decision-making. We were split as a committee in our evaluation of Dr. Evans against these 5 indicators, though there was a strong bias towards an exemplary rating against the curriculum component. The consensus of this committee was a ranking of proficient in instructional leadership. Moving on to management and operations. Here, too, there was a nearly even split among the committee among the 5 indicators. They are environment, human resources, management and development, scheduling and management information systems, law, ethics and policies, and fiscal systems. In this instance, the bias was towards an exemplary rating, and the chair notes unanimous consent in Dr. Evans' exemplary rating in fiscal systems. So strong bias towards exemplary.
Yeah.
You're smirking. Is that why you're going to
Thank
point
you, Ellen.
towards her? Share in some of the glory? Okay, moving on to standard number 3. This is our family and community engagement. There are 4 indicators under family and community engagement. They include general engagement of the community, sharing responsibility, communication, and also addressing family concerns. In this category, the school committee was unanimous in an overall rating of proficient. Among the 4 indicators, the committee was similarly consistent, with the only split coming under family concerns, in which Dr. Evans received both proficient and exemplary ratings. In other words, outside of that, straight down the line, proficient. So we were fairly consistent in that regard. Now I'm going to move on to the 4th and final standard, which is professional culture. There are 6 indicators. They include commitment to high standards, cultural proficiency, communication, continuous learning, shared vision, and managing conflict. In the last of the 4 standards, the school committee was nearly evenly split on the 6 individual indicators, in this instance with a bias towards proficient. So, I'm going to come back, having reviewed this, once more to share that under Standard 1 instructional leadership, the committee's bias was towards a proficient rating. Under Standard 2 management and operations, strong bias towards exemplary. And under Standard 3 family and community engagement, and Standard 4 professional culture, strong bias towards proficient. So we come now to the overall summative performance evaluation. Having gone through this project, each member is asked to provide a write-up, comments and analysis, the big picture, if you will. And what I'd like to do before I kind of reach the conclusion of the summative analysis is ask committee members who have at the table some excerpts of some of your submissions that I thought fairly captured the sentiment of everyone around the table. There's an order to this, and I'm looking to Brian, if you would mind going first to share your thoughts with Judy.
I'd be delighted. The 2018-19 school year has thus far been a successful one for Dr. Evans. She is always available and responsive to the committee members and to town residents alike. She is kind, caring, and engaged in the community, both in the schools and beyond. She sets high standards for herself and those who work around her. Most importantly, she truly cares about our children, their health and well-being, and the education they receive. Regardless of the outcome of the override, Dr. Evans has worked tirelessly to provide the committee and the town updates based on the detailed analysis of all the budgetary options. She spent night after night at PTO meetings and town forums. I and everyone I have spoken with are always impressed with her deep and thorough understanding of budgetary issues and her ability to explain them. Though negotiated by the school committee, teacher contracts this year were particularly complicated due to the proximity to the override, as well as the relative imbalance of our teachers' salaries with our peer districts. Dr. Evans has been able to deftly straddle the line between the school department and the school committee, providing perspectives to the committee on all the issues. With her help, we were able to quickly and equitably settle an otherwise challenging contract negotiation.
Thank you, Brian.
Welcome.
Zena, can you share?
I'm a rebel, Chris. Don't have a heart attack, but I'm going to say something first.
It's your turn to say anything.
I was a little scripted, but I would have chosen a little bit different of my summation. I shared that with you, and I just want to express what an amazing experience it has been working with you. I came on school committee to not only support the community, but also to learn about equity in education and delve into that depth. And it has been a true honor, and I hope my narratives explain that much more clearly than I'm about to.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Evans has clearly laid out her plans for curriculum modernization, but has been limited by the amount of work to be done in collaboration with staff at all levels, especially teachers who must then teach new curriculum. She's limited by our budget and shockingly low per pupil spending amount, but this has not slowed down her efforts to meet her goals for individualized instruction. In the category of assessments, Dr. Evans is on the cutting edge of pursuing performance-based assessments. She is not only a board member of MCIEA, but she is also facilitating classrooms in our district to serve as pilots for innovation.
Because, you know.
I could go on. Just kidding.
Well, and can I just again reiterate for anybody watching at home, these are excerpts from committee members that members have, as Zena was just saying. So we all have sort of reviews of the superintendent. There's much more information there. This is sort of just building into a composite evaluation. So well said, Zena. Michelle. You're up.
I will read along and save my comments for later. Dr. Evans continues to do an outstanding job growing and learning with
Just
the
speak into the
Winchester
mic.
Public Schools staff, parents, and students. She is a student-centered, instruction, and data-driven superintendent who maintains high standards in professional development, finance, and personnel management. She continues to grow as a learner and professional herself and serves on the board of the MCIEA and SEAM Collaborative and meets regularly in a group with the Middlesex area superintendents. Dr. Evans continues to drive the district forward on innovative student learning and assessment. While our students continue to score among the best in the state on the MCAS, Dr. Evans continues to examine our district curriculum and practices to ensure that we are educating our students to be ready for 21st century jobs. This means she is examining our practice in social emotional learning, competency-based instruction, performance-based assessment, while meeting the needs of an increasingly diverse student body.
Thank you. Susan.
So I'm last. So the 2018-19 district leadership team is stronger, more collaborative, more committed to continuous learning, and more effective than I've ever seen in Winchester. Staff added during Dr. Evans' tenure have all been mentored and integrated into the team well, and everyone just seems focused on doing their very best and putting students' learning and well-being at the top, as a top priority. The superintendent is particularly effective at identifying and mentoring and promoting staff from within the district, and continuous improvement in curriculum and teaching practice is also very strong. Judy's use of social media to share with the community snapshots of engaged, actively learning students is very effective. She's a regular visitor at school buildings and professional development workshops at Parkhurst, attends student productions and events, and participates in community organizations. She's highly effective in her role as a member of the Educational Facilities Planning and Building Committee to advocate for educational program needs as the top priority, and also works very well with the Finance Committee, Town Manager, and Select Board on budget matters. She shows strong strategic thinking and negotiation skills, has a positive outlook, and a very good sense of humor. She works hard to ensure the discussions at school committee meetings are well-informed and collegial. And the district's challenge, I guess, is to sort of engage more actively and compellingly with the wider community to build enthusiasm for education and for innovation in order to spread the truly transformative spirit that's catching on in the schools.
Thank you, Susan. Well said. So, as chair of the committee, I voluntarily drew the short stick and have summarized school committee feedback on areas for growth. As most people had things that they felt like Dr. Evans could be working on, some generic, some a little more specific. So members have and should continue to speak with Dr. Evans on these and other issues that they have identified throughout the school year. Suggestions for growth from the committee include building her leadership team. This is as much a positive as anything. Continue to build a leadership team and staff and to collaborate with them and the community to grow innovative curriculum programming and even school buildings themselves. With a school committee of varied professional backgrounds and personality types, each of us with different learning styles, sometimes we each need different information, even if it is to come to the same conclusions. Occasionally, the superintendent will question such requests if she doesn't feel the assembly of the data or the analysis is warranted. Dr. Evans should understand that members' requests need not suggest a lack of trust, but rather may be necessary for some members to get from A to B, or perhaps even help make the case for initiatives and change among our peers in the community and building support for district initiatives. Progress on the homework and grading practices study group under District Improvement Goal number 1 has been slow, and the release of information to the committee and the town as a whole has been slower. This is one of the few district improvement goals not yet being adequately met through progress in other areas that are noticeable and meaningful. Having wrapped that part up, I want to end on a positive note, which is The consensus of the committee, having gone through the written summative evaluation, is a strong bias towards an overall proficient rating with some marks of exemplary. And in my mind, the most important box in this whole process at the end of the day is, what is Dr. Evans' impact on student learning? There was unanimous consent that it is high, and that is why you're here, and that's why we asked you to come. So I want to say nice job for that.
Thank you.
That's the best point to end it on.
Thank you. Thank you
It's a
so much.
mouthful. I don't think I missed anything. Do you have any thoughts you want to, now that you heard all this, any surprises?
I commend the members for the thorough job you've done working with this rubric, which isn't always easy, and it doesn't always capture everything that we all think is important as part of the responsibilities of the superintendent. You know that really the best leaders are the most humble leaders, who think that really we'd like to fade into the background and let the work of the teachers and the students and the other administrators really shine. And the focus is on me here, but I can tell you that we have an amazing school community, and the achievements of our students are a credit to their teachers, their administrators, their parents, and the wider support of the Winchester citizens. So I couldn't be prouder than I am of this district. My inclination to be impatient with the pace of change leads me to share your frustrations with the lack of innovation that we've been able to implement in terms of moving towards preparing our students for the future that is still largely unknown, and at the same time making sure that we meet the expectations of the community in terms of what Winchester High School graduates should look like. So lots of work left to do. I appreciate the positive feedback, and I also appreciate the suggestions for growth. This is what we do with all of our teachers. This is what we do with all of our administrators. Self-reflection is a huge part of the evaluation process, and so I have tried to be reflective and get feedback from the leadership team, especially on things that we can do better as a group. So thank you for your thoughtful efforts and your honest and direct feedback. That's incredibly helpful. So thank you. And thank you again for all of your many hours that you have put into this process. Really very helpful.
Can I just say thank you to you, all of you, because we're all super busy working towards the override, many community meetings that are going on, and so this was just yet another thing on everybody's plate, and without a doubt, everybody took this very seriously. So
Absolutely.
really, really appreciate the thought that went into all of this. Yep.
I just want to make another plug related to the override. Having worked with Dr. Evans, this is more of a public statement. It is amazing to see the complexity of this district and all of the layers at the same time that we're demanding unbelievable amount of communication from you, unbelievable amount of innovation and technology driven, and you have DESE, and there's just so many apples in the air that you are juggling, and it is unbelievably amazing to watch you at work with your leadership team. I love working with all of you, and I want to emphasize to the public that everything you ask for, there is so much support for in the work you've done and the things you've laid out, that every penny can be trusted as a real need for our students, a real need for our professionals. And so I just want to make sure that the public sees how much we as school committee members value your leadership in analyzing for us how this school district runs and the needs and your vision for it. I emphasized greatly your inspired vision for our students, and so I wanted to make sure that people going into the ballot box on March 26th know that you have done an unbelievably amazing job with the limited resources you have, and the resources we are asking for are real needs for our kids.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Zena. So just a housekeeping item, Judy, I had a lot of handwritten notes on this, just so I wasn't going to miss or screw up tonight. So I'll get an electronic version of the rubric that I can sign, that you can sign, and Frida has some copies of the remarks tonight. I'll pass mine along to you as well, so we won't let that slip.
Thank you very much.
And I can breathe a sigh of relief. So thank you all very, very much. We're going to move into action items, section 6. We've already tackled the batting cages, so now we're going to come back to school choice.
Right.
We've had a public hearing.
Don't know your own strength tonight.
Yeah. Am I stressed? I've done that before. We've already had the public hearing. Any comments, questions from the committee to the superintendent before there is a motion on school choice? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that the Winchester Public Schools not participate in the
Yes,
school
exactly.
choice program for the school year 2019-2020 because of increasing enrollment and space limitations.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, thank you. Okay, and now we move to a second reading and vote on two policies, ACA 1 and JJIC. Who wishes to lead this off?
The vice chair. So the policies that you have in front of you are very similar with some editing cleanups and some follow-up on some requests from the first read. I believe at this time the elementary principals have had an opportunity to see them as well. I see that that is not, so that has happened. There are some, you'll see on this inclusive sports participation policy, that was some feedback from the committee last week that some of them were quite long. There was some repetition and repeat. And we have tried to eliminate that in the inclusive sports participation policy and just reference the initial policy that we have earlier in the policy manual, the ACA 1, the non-discrimination on the basis of gender identity. I really want to take a minute and thank all of the members of our staff and our students in the community and our community members who have also taken a look at these policies and given us feedback on them through the process. This has been very collaborative, particularly with the stakeholders that will be affected by this policy. And I think it's important to note that, you know, when we make policy like this, we have it in place for things that go wrong, but when we institute so we know where we want to be, but when we make new policy, it's always, the process is always as important as the product that we produce. And I think that we have had some really great feedback on the process of this policy. So we're recommending at this time that we would be able to go forward and vote for these policies. The one outstanding thing that I think we still would have to do if you would vote these policies tonight would be to have them read by district council. So we could, depending on everybody's comfort level, we could vote them as presented or on the basis of recommendation of the council.
Or we could show consensus and just wait until we get a report back
That's
from council
also-
too, right? So, I don't want to go first. I have a couple of comments, but I'm looking over here because I already know with these two. This is the policy subcommittee.
The changes are largely cleanup. Because when I first looked at it, the first page is almost half crossed out, so I was
Right, so that's
panicked.
largely cleanup.
But everything else seems to be
Just
just
minor
fixing
edits.
it, yeah.
Right.
So, which is good. So I don't actually have any questions other than procedural. If we are able to vote contingent on review, I don't see any. This is just me personally. It's my turn. I don't see any reason to wait for another meeting. I would propose voting on it contingent on review by council, and if council has concerns, then we could re-vote it later on. But
Yep.
that was just
Right.
that's all I have to say.
Yep.
Susan?
Yeah, that sounds like a, that sounds like a good way forward, and I just want to commend you guys for shopping this around and talking to everybody, and just a very good, thorough process. It
And we've
shows.
seen positive
Yeah, just talking.
responses since this, so
Good.
it's been very rewarding experience.
Good.
And I want to commend you for not just shopping it around, but chopping it down. Because it's policy, so it makes it a little more accessible. I want to start with JJ, do we say IC or 1C?
Aye.
Yeah. Inclusive sports participation. So, I think one of the issues that came up in the first read, and again, this is just a housekeeping item more than anything. So we have a policy, it's proposed to be JJIC. And then we come down the page, and then it says policy regarding gender identity-based participation,
I forgot
right?
to take that out.
And we turn the page, it says additional
Yeah.
policies. So it starts to look like policies within policies
we
within
just
policies.
forgot. We just forgot to edit that out.
Okay,
We
so, I mean,
discussed that.
just so we're clear, I would suggest we just strike the words policy regarding.
Yep, yep.
And you still have a heading, it's just gender identity-based participation.
Yep.
And we turn the page, and then here we strike additional policies for.
Yep,
Does that make sense?
yep, we
Okay.
intended to do that.
Okay.
Just didn't catch it in the edit.
And I appreciate we have cross-references now at the end of this. There were a couple of cross-references I was still hoping to see, like, for instance, AC, which is our non-discrimination policy. It comes right after establishing who the people are in their school district. It's not a big deal, but it's important to kind of connect the dots. I was just going to ask, are there reasons why there's some policies that are not cross-referenced here that we have talked about before? Or could this just maybe be a request to you guys to go back and take another look?
We could,
Yeah, I mean, I could go back and make an edit.
I think all policies are like included. It's just like a given that.
Well, not all policies are cross-referenced. In other words, if you've
I know
got
they're
something
not, like-
meaningful, you want to sort of say so.
I
mean,
mean,
I think it would strengthen it,
ACA1
is what I'm
is
saying.
referencing that same kind of language, but I don't really think that we need to delay this vote just to add that, so
No, I'm not.
I would be happy to
I'm not
throw that in
suggesting,
there.
I'm not suggesting a delay. I think I suggested at the last meeting we cross-reference AC just because it's one of the most important, in my opinion, it's one of our most
Right,
Just
important
throw it
policies.
in there, please.
I
Yep.
would throw AC on there.
Sure.
Deal.
Which is our non-discrimination policy.
And I think there was an effort to reference the policies that people might also be curious about if they'd read this policy, to know that we, what we were connecting it to and sort of what we had vetted it through at the state level and at the MIAA level, without it making a laundry, without also making a laundry list. In the effort, because we were also directed by the committee to sort of tighten things up a bit too. So if there's anything that people feel really strongly about, I have no problem referencing AC as the non-discrimination policy. It makes complete sense. It seemed redundant, but if you feel it's necessary, I'm happy to add that
I almost
in.
feel like it ought to be the first policy you reference just because
Yeah.
it's very fundamental.
Right.
We can do
and
that.
A prior school committee spent a lot of time on that because it was just so important, but.
Right.
Anyway, and again, before I leave the cross-references, so reference to again, housekeeping, right? MIAA policy 28.3, and then there's this long URL address. I think we have some examples in our policy manual when there is a document that's produced by, say, the state that we want to include for reference. We actually have it. Like it's we do that with forms, for instance, that people need to find access to. So rather than direct them to a website, we just include the form in the policy manual. I'm always leery of putting a URL address because
disappear over time.
you can be sure the
The-
state's going
the
to go
link
change the
will
website
change.
and somebody's going to say, oh, I couldn't find it. So I'm assuming it's not wildly long, right? Whatever that is, that clarification that you cite, I would suggest just print it.
Several pages.
It's
pretty long.
actually
And
pretty
have it.
long.
I mean, can we
I was
just,
gonna say we could keep the URL, but link it into a PDF file within our system. We could download their PDF, save it, and link to that, so it's not based
Yeah.
on their website.
all I'm saying is if it's really important, you got to be sure it's accessible,
So
to
we can do
people.
that, that's easy.
Okay, thank you. And on ACA1, my question was just on, again, cross-references. Are there some that would be there? Is that something we could ask the policy subcommittee to look at, or not needed?
The only one I think that it would be AC.
Okay,
Precedes it in the book, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that would be good. So if those proposed amendments make sense, is there a motion to adopt these policies pending, help us with language here, Judy, pending?
Pending Advice from
Review
council?
and
Review by council.
Pending review and advice from council. Is there such a motion?
There is. I thought they might want to.
I was,
Didn't want to take it away from you guys.
Somebody can say so
I
moved.
I move to vote to approve the policies non-discrimination on the basis of gender identity, ACA1, and the inclusive athletic participation policy, JJIC, as presented pending the advice and approval of council.
As presented. and
As
amended.
presented and
As
amended.
presented and amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gina
Thank
and Michelle.
Yeah.
All right, preschool tuition rates for next school year.
Mrs. Allen.
It's me. So, as you're aware, we currently offer both half and full-day integrated preschool programs for 3, 4, and 5-year-old students. The pre-K program is designed to meet the needs of students with identified disabilities and includes typically developing peers in the inclusion classrooms. We've reviewed the tuition for area preschools, and based upon this information and our estimated costs for next year, I'm recommending increases for full-day pre-K rates to increase by $400 and half-day pre-K tuition rates to increase by $200 per year. The current and proposed rates are in your packet, and these increases are consistent with what we did last year as well.
It's a pretty straightforward memo.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable increase. It still places us well below the average market rate for comparable programs.
Yes.
And as you said at the last meeting, parents who've already gone into the lottery and have a spot, they were told there was a range, so they're
They weren't given a rate.
expecting the final rate
right.
soon.
They were told that there would be a rate increase and that we would provide them with that information as soon as it was available.
Just two quick sort of trends to have in the back of your mind. One trend is the percentage of students at the preschool level who have eligibility for free or reduced price lunch has increased, and it is a significant factor in us needing to increase the overall tuition, something we're watching closely. Very typical in districts that the preschool free and reduced lunch percentages are higher than when students are older. Maybe based on family income, parents home with other young children, a variety of factors. So, so that's something to consider. And this increase, preschool program is funded by appropriations and tuition. This will help us to offset any additional costs related to the salary settlements in the negotiated contracts.
I have a question about that. I was through that preschool program. Are the reduced lunch and free lunches just provided by the Whitsons?
No, they don't pay tuition if they are eligible for free
sorry.
lunch.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
wow,
So that's the
yeah.
criteria
Yes, yes,
for
yes. Okay.
reduced or free tuition.
Got it. I'm
And
sorry.
very typically, it's a much higher, our overall free and reduced percentage is 5%, something like that. Depends on the school, higher at some schools than others, but it's high, it seems to be higher in the preschool than that.
Okay.
And so, given the small numbers, only 100 students, a few more free or reduced price students can impact our, how much we are able to offset the costs of the program.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. Just something to watch for.
So is there a motion to approve the FY20 preschool tuition rate increases as presented?
I move to. You want to do it?
I move
Your
that we
question.
approve the 2019-2020 preschool tuition rates as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, approval of minutes. I think Susan had some feedback.
I had one small,
Yeah, Frida and I
No,
discussed it
yeah.
and we'll add it in.
Does it need to
On
be
the- on the,
shared with the committee?
it was just on whichever one it is, where we moved into executive session, there's supposed to be a roll call vote, and I think under the open meeting law, the whole purpose of the roll call vote is to name each member and how they voted, so, just to make that clear.
Just a technicality.
Yeah, technicality, exactly.
Which one was?
It was the 26th. It was, yeah, the
The
February
26th.
26th.
Yep. Page
Kind of
46.
at the end.
Doesn't it say that? Oh, the roll call vote.
It doesn't say who moved and seconded it.
Oh, but it says
And
roll
it
call
says-
vote was taken in unanimous with everybody's
Right.
name.
Right, so we just need to
The motion and
record who
second.
made the motion. and
Okay.
second.
Okay. So
So-
if there were no other catches or edits, you want to make a motion, Susan?
I
on the
move that
two?
we approve the minutes for February 26th, 2019 as corrected or amended, and for March 5th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let it be recognized that was Susan's last official act, short of adjourning this meeting.
Was that why? Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
it
we're
is.
trying to stretch this out. Have you picked up
Yeah.
on that? Okay, we already had a chair report. Judy?
I'd like to make sure that everyone knows that we're having a great event tomorrow night at Winchester High School Auditorium at 7 p.m. It's called Books and Budgets, sponsored by WIFI and PISC. And it will be a discussion of school funding, a topic near and dear to my heart. But the important narrative piece of this discussion is it's not just presenting numbers, it's presenting the story behind the numbers. So teachers and principals and other administrators will answer questions, will be moderated, and there'll be time for the audience to ask questions as well. So it's very timely and helpful if you want to understand more about school budgets and what our needs are and how those intersect. The following night, Thursday night, Parent to Parent is sponsoring kindergarten orientation as they do every year. We'll have lots of kindergarten folks there and principals and 350, 60, more than that if both parents attend. Folks filling the high school auditorium, 7 p.m. Thursday night, to talk about kindergarten. This is an adult event, so people are encouraged to attend and learn more about our kindergarten program. I hope on Thursday that you'll be able to listen to the inaugural podcast of a program I'm calling Win Talk with Judy and Lisa.
Catchy.
Very catchy.
Yeah, that's where.
Not with branding. Not with
Working
branding.
with us, please.
We're branding.
We're open to suggestions.
Yeah.
We need it a name. So, new town manager.
Winchester? How's that?
New town manager Lisa Wong and I are going to regularly do a podcast, which is both an audio and a video, 15-minute conversation about what's happening in town and schools. And we hope to make it more fun than the first one, which was all about the upcoming ballot question. But
Will we be able to find you on iTunes?
I hope so.
I think so.
I think so.
Okay.
Anybody around the world could listen or watch. So.
Excellent.
Thrilling. That's it. Last thing I just wanted to make the community aware, as is not atypical in middle schools, we've had a few instances where there's been some graffiti found in the restrooms at the middle school that has been very concerning to us. Not threatening anyone in particular, but just not inclusive and welcoming. And it's contrary to our values. And so we don't tolerate this sort of non-inclusive outreach by our students. And so the middle school has been taking it very seriously. Well, we believe it's the work of one student. We haven't identified that student. We're really focusing on the educational piece of this. Why writing something that is racist or hateful in a school anonymously is hurtful to the whole community and contrary to our values. Lots of work being done at the middle school around this with whole class assemblies and then follow-up activities by grade level with individual teachers. So I just wanted to reassure the wider community that this kind of thing unfortunately happens everywhere, but it's not something that we tolerate, take lightly, or will excuse, that we'll address it head on. That we ask for parents to partner with us in speaking with their children about being upstanders and about making sure that we all speak up for people who may feel afraid to do so for themselves. And so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that this is something that we've been addressing and that I have every confidence that Principal Lynn and the team and the teachers at the middle school will continue to address and use it as an important learning opportunity.
And as a parent of a middle schooler, I just also want to thank Mr. Lin for his communication with the parents on this issue, and that it has been regular and supportive and included ways to talk to your kids about it at home as well, and that knowing that the teachers and the staff at the school have also been working on it with the kids at school as well. I think that addressing it like in the way that they've been doing has been really impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Any other thoughts?
I just want to, can I just personally thank Susan for her stewardship, her careful eye to detail, her supportive and listening ear, and her unwavering commitment to students for so many years. So I think a little round of applause.
We'll make it more awkward for her when she comes back.
Yeah.
Remember us.
You're not gonna forget us.
I'm not gonna go far away.
She is also a good leader and a good mentor in my first year on school committee when she was chair. So
Thank you, that's good.
You'll be
That's all good
missed.
to hear.
She really sets the bar very high for public service. I think when you think of local politics, it's people like you that we want to be at the forefront. It's amazing.
Thank you.
And you earned every penny you were given.
Yes.
every penny.
I was just going to say, she may be moving up a pay grade.
Yeah.
And I
She
think-
should ask for a
and I think you
raise.
actually have a few extra meetings, as hard as that is to imagine. I think you actually have more meetings on the horizon, depending on how this election comes out on Tuesday. But, okay, next
find
meeting
out.
dates. Can we say April 9th, 9:30, and then April 23rd at 7 PM? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have warrants, Frida, Ellen? Yep, okay.
Hard work on the evaluation. I know that's a bear.
Covered a lot of ground, it's 9:10.
I looked up at one point, it was 8 o'clock, I was like, it can't be 8 o'clock.
I know,
We've
I
been
thought
here
the
for like
same
an hour and a half, 2 hours.